Gentlemen and other gentlemen, welcome to the world's premier unintentional ASMR altcoin cast. Today we're going to talk about Doge and why I am no longer holding the short on Doge. This is the daily chart that you're seeing right now, and currently it seems that we're in a nice downtrend. Of course, we have a nice macro downtrend going on. So why would I want to step away from that as someone who's a very big bear and has made a lot of money shorting from basically the top of this spring until now? It's because the daily is coming up. You can see this very obvious bottom here. So where our buying pressure lies when we had this big dump was down here with the candle bodies and the wicks. You can see it's very obvious, and it lined up very nicely with a lot of buying pressure in a past attempted dump that failed. So right now we're approaching that level very quickly, and we are under the EMA, and it seems like we keep making nice little resistance points on the daily, but I don't expect those to do much in the future. And as we are approaching this area of a lot of buying pressure from the past on these big attempted dumps that rebounded very well, huge springs up from both of these, I don't really want to risk that we dump into this maybe when I'm asleep or just doing something else, out getting groceries or something. We wick it down very deeply and then bounce up very hard. I don't want to be like on a 10-hour sleep binge this weekend and something like that happens. So that's the main reason I'm fading away from this right now. It's just purely based on technicals. We're getting very close down here on the RSI to being oversold, and we can see what happened the last time we were oversold was this huge spring. So if we are to hit oversold on some kind of dump into this exact same spot, the RSI being the same, the formation of where we're buying probably being the same, I would expect a big spring off of that too. And I'm kind of expecting a big spring regardless of whether there's a dump or something, because bulls really just have to hold this level. If the bulls lose this level, they have no technical support at all until about 9 cents. There's just nothing here on the daily whatsoever. These are not sports. There's nothing to confirm this. They blasted straight up through it, and general rule of thumb is that if you blast up through it on the way up, you're probably going to blast through it on the way down. So even though I don't want to be sleeping when the dump happens, I don't want to be sleeping if something like this happens and we get another pump, like an attempted pump. I think they have to attempt to pump this. It doesn't mean they'll succeed, but they have to try, and there's no reason for me to be short going into a place where bulls have to buy. So if we go to the weekly, I'll get rid of this box so it's easier to see. We have our daily marked here, and we can go up to the weekly and see if this makes any sense on the weekly. So what I'm going to do is mark the weekly in like purple or something so it's very easy to see. And we have something pretty simple here, like the tops of this sort of formation, and we'll make that visible so we can actually tell what's going on. So here's like our closest support there, but we also have this. You can see the bottoms of these wicks right here, and that's a very obvious weekly point. Beyond that, if we want to go up to candle bodies, we're already below, so this is really not relevant. We're looking for supports on the way down at the moment, not resistances on the way up. So these two lines are really what we're working with, and not these two lines on the RSI. So a good thing on the weekly, if you're looking at your RSI, is that we've crossed below the halfway point. Usually that's pretty bearish, but with this buying pressure here, I want to make sure that going into this weekly support, we're not going to post a green, because it would be about time for some bulls to want some relief, right? 6 weeks of nothing but red, nothing but downtrend, and if they don't take this level, they're going to about 8 on the weekly. So why would they not fight that? It's what, over a 50% decline from these supports, right? Yeah, right at 50% decline. So they really have to try. And if we look where these lines come out on the daily, it's exactly where we were talking about there being buy pressure for a spring. So this purple was the weekly, and it hits the wick bottom over here. It hits close enough to these wick bottoms. So this being a daily support and the wick bottoms being our weekly, we've really got a very clear zone that the bulls have to buy if they are going to save this from falling 50%. So if we know that the bulls are definitely going to try and pump at this level or they die, then why would I want to hold a short going into this level? Why would I want to buy, not buy, but why would I want to sell into this level when I know it's got to be bought? Below that, there's really nothing until this block. So what I'm looking for right now is a failure of probably about 16. If we either come to this block and spring, and the spring is very weak, something that only, gets here and starts to reverse, then I would want to short that and just hold on to it, not expecting the weekly to do anything. If the spring, of course, is strong and it comes up and starts to do something like this, then I don't want to be short at all. But I think this has to be something, right? Even retail is gonna be looking for hope right now, and people who understand TA, people who have big bags, they're going to try and pump this level. They'll be shilling it all over Twitter, they'll be shitting it on TikTok, whatever, that you have to buy this level because that's where it's going to spring. And then the worry for me as a bear would be that that initial spring is a little bit successful, so sort of rookies who don't understand that this is really a bear market, the only thing they own is Doge or something like that because of Robinhood buyers or something, they start to see it spring up, so they start to buy. And if it creates a FOMO, because this is very much like a normie coin at this point, then that could actually reverse it. It could become some kind of self-fulfilling prophecy sort of thing. So I'm very much fading this level. If it gets a very shitty spring and starts to turn around, I'll short again. Otherwise, I'm just looking for the level to break, and then I'll hold a short from support to support. Really, there's nothing here. There's nothing here. So if the noble bears can take this, then it's just free money. 50% all the way down. Unless, there's a chance, of course, that some new support is formed. But at this point, assuming that it's going to be about a 50% downside, you don't have to do like huge leverage to make a ton of money off of that. You could just do 1x leverage and make a lot of money. So that's what I'm hoping for on Doge, with the daily and the weekly lining up this beautifully in both places. There's no reason to come into them risking a short. We want to short to them, but not through them. And that's the idea with Doge right now. I'll look very quickly at a couple other altcoins, because this formation, I want to point it out just with a little squiggle real quick. A bunch of down, a big sell-off, a little spring, and then this sort of limp dig down. I'm pointing out this sort of formation because if we go to the market cap site for like all altcoins, they mostly look the same. Look at Ethereum. A bunch of down, a big dump, comes back up, and then just sort of tapers. Big dump. Looking at the second half of all of these, Binance. A dump, pump back, tapers off. ADA, a bunch of down, a dump, a pump, tapers off. XRP, a bunch of down, a dump, pumps up, tapers off. Looking at all these, like, Doge is the same, DOT is the same, Uni is the same, BCH, LTC, it's all the same. So it doesn't matter what shitcoin you're playing right now. Most of them have more or less the exact same chart, but just to show that that's true, we can look at a couple more. Here's Tron, again, that same line that I just drew, bunch of down, dumps up, comes and starts to limp dick down. Same thing happening as Doge. So it's not really important which one you short, other than Tron is not like a normie coin. Bitcoin's a normie coin. It's on TikTok, it's on Robinhood. Like, people can buy it with USD. They can transfer money from their bank to like Robinhood or Coinbase or whatever and have Doge. Most people can't buy Tron. So I'm less scared right now about going into something like Tron or DOT with a short, because if it starts to get a little spring, it's more likely to be sold off. If it starts to get a little spring, it doesn't have a bunch of people on TikTok saying, see, it's going up, you should keep buying it. It's got like crypto Twitter, which is not as effective at maintaining some kind of FOMO pump. So Doge is much scarier to be shorting going into a support because of that reason. Now on Tron, you have sort of the same idea. You can see a previous kind of support going into a more current support. You had these wicks here, the bottoms here. So there's some buying pressure down here somewhere, but we got to figure out where it really is. And when you're looking at something like Doge, how far are we from where the buying pressure is probably going to show up? It's like 6 or 7% maybe to the bottom of this previous support. 7%. Okay, we go to Tron. How far are we from the previous buying pressure? About 12, 13. That's a little bit nicer. We look at DOT. That's a very different one, right? You just have a dump. There was no pump here. So let's save that one for just a second. Look at ADA, because I do want to talk more about DOT. Downward pressure, a dump, comes back up, limp dicks down. Same thing as Doge, same thing as Tron. So your question just becomes, how far are we from support? And if we look at the previous sort of wave low, it's about 7%, so 6%. So Doge, ADA, you're looking at 6 to 7% downside. Tron maybe like 7%. That's not a huge opportunity. If there's some kind of reversal at this level, the reversal could be, you know, a complete market reversal. Maybe this is like some double bottom formation and the market takes off. People are fatigued from selling or something. Hello mod, if you're here, please feel free to ban the bot. So we could get some kind of double bottom formation on these sorts of things that causes them to take off, generates FOMO. You know, to break this sort of eternal range resistance would be pretty bullish and people would be very excited for that. So to be shorting into only like a 6% downside, even if you're at say 5x, that gets you 30% versus just waiting, seeing that we spring up and going long instead, you're going to have the much bigger profit opportunity from that. So if this were to fail, then you have this very nice, very archaic buying pressure all through here. Where did I learn all of this? Trial and error, a lot of books and a lot of videos, a lot of just talking to people and practicing. So if you want to learn something, if you want to learn how to chart and you know nothing else, you can just look up something you're interested in. You can give me a coin if you want and we can look at it really quickly. It's probably the same as almost every other coin. What's something I definitely don't chart? EOS. So we'll look at USDT for EOS real quick because I know I don't chart EOS. So if nothing else, you can, and just before we do this, same thing, downtrend, dump, comes up, fades out. But if nothing else, you can start by trying to look for horizontals, and you can just look for the bottoms of big formations or the tops of big formations and kind of see if anything happens there. Just throw a line down, see if it makes sense. Does this make sense? Yeah, bottom of that candle, we've got some wicks, we've got this wick bottom. So there we go, we've already got a resistance, and all you have to do is look for tops and look for bottoms and see if it makes any sense to you. And that's a great way to start. You can just pick a coin that you like and start throwing some lines down and then wait and see if they pan out. And I'm not going to say the name of the thing that you just said, but that's cute. I like that. Okay, so let's get back to ADA. So that formation across all alts doesn't really look great to me. What this is telling me is that alts are not decoupled from Bitcoin. They are definitely going to be dependent on the price action that Bitcoin takes. The fact that all of them look the same means that fundamentals don't really matter. It doesn't matter if ADA is working on smart contracts, if its chart is the same fucking chart as Tron. It doesn't matter if Tron acquires more file sharing stuff, right? If its chart looks the same as DOGE, which has 0 fundamentals. So I'm not too excited about any alts right now. What I'm looking for is something that doesn't just clone the ETH chart, which is a bunch of down, a big dip, and a fade. When all your alts are just following ETH, you might as well just be trading ETH. That's going to be the first mover. Or you can just watch ETH to see what it does. And right now it's losing support, it's retesting resistance, and then it will probably continue to move down toward its weekly, which is what I think most things are going to do. If you're looking for your downside on ETH as a bear, you're looking, again, about 7%. So I'm not looking to fade anything for 7%. I want to fade something when it's got these huge gaps of no support whatsoever. That's the free money. In parentheses, we can't make promises, right? You can't say the word guarantee when you're talking about finance. It's literally illegal. But I wanted this area of no support, complete open air, 50% drop. That's what I want. I'm a greedy bear, and I want a lot of money with really no sign that is going to be support. I don't want something that is potentially only 6% away from finding some kind of daily support. So I think the best examples are going to be things that don't follow that generic pattern. They're not just a little bit of down, a dump, and a fade. A little bit of down, a dump, and a fade. A little bit of down, dump, and a fade. They all look the same, right? So we want something that looks different. Well, something that looks different right now is DOT. It doesn't even have a pump. It had just down. So that's very interesting to me. You had this range here on the daily, and we have since lost that range. We've kind of retested, but not really. And we're looking for where might support be. While just coming over something like this, we can see that there's been a little bit of interaction around this area, kind of a close enough on some of these wicks. And right now we're coming up to the same place. So I wouldn't want to just go short right now because of this support failing. But what I'd be looking at is the fact that this big support that stretches across so much time is still seeing interaction. Okay, we'll look at Luna in just a minute. And this is seeing so much interaction now. And if this fails, then I get to be a greedy bear like I was just talking about. And we can start to look toward the top of this with really no support at all through here. And that downside would give us 22, 23%, something like that, instead of trying to short something like Ethereum right now and hoping for like a 7%. So we want the maximum opportunity with the least possibility of getting some kind of really big support coming into play in the meantime. So look at where these charts blasted through on the way up, and they will probably blast through on the way down. That was really all I had planned to say today, but we do have a request to look at Luna, so we'll check that out really quickly. And I assume you want it on US. If you wanted it on Bitcoin pair, please let me know in chat and I will swap over to that real quick. So we do have some marks on here. I'm just going to get rid of them so we can start fresh because they're probably very old. So looking for where our resistance would be, something like this probably. We can just look at the top of this little range completely, and we don't necessarily need to color code everything, right? You know what we're looking at, but just for the sake of it, here we go. There's probably the top of our range. We're looking for a range bottom, probably something like this. Yes, you do have some swing below it, but the bulk of our range, the meat of it, is carried here. So I would like to consider this for now to be kind of a macro range, and I'm just doing this on the fly, so it might be that I would change my mind if I took a closer look. But I'm looking also at sort of interim levels, something like this, that you could consider a support, and that's great. Okay, so that's pretty much what we've got right now. And of course, we have a local uptrend. Does this make sense? Sure, there we go. So Luna is being a good boy right now. Luna is not matching all the other charts that had the same sort of formation we were just talking about, where it had a dump down and kind of did this V shape, but instead of just tapering off, it's actually succeeding in pumping up a little bit. So when you are wanting to be bullish about this, the scary thing is exactly the same thing about being bearish on the other ones. What's your upside potential? Your upside is maybe 10%. But if you're wrong and we have another failure at this resistance above us, which looks like it might be happening, right? We're getting turned away at this point. We're getting rejected here right now. So if you're bullish and you're wrong, your downside is more like 20%, where your upside might be like 10%. Well, I guess if you're right and you're bullish, you're going to blast through and be up here. So that's what you want. But why risk being bullish after a failed breakout? When the trend is up, just wait on that trend to take you above and show you that it wants to continue. That's my strategy, is usually I'll sacrifice a little bit of profit to be sure, and then you still make 40% on leverage, whatever leverage you're using. So you're going to make a lot of money if you're right and you wait for that confirmation, versus if you are wrong and we would say come up here and have another bearish retest. Your earliest ejection point maybe would be around here. So your downside being 14% on leverage is going to be a lot of money if you're wrong, versus just waiting a little bit, seeing if you're right, and then making a lot of money. So the question, when I go long or short on assets like BTC or ETH, do I do it in USDM contracts or CoinM contracts, and why? I do both. It just depends on really what platform I'm using at the time. To be honest, I think it's best to find a chart that you think has a really good setup. For example, I think the DOGE USD chart has a great setup, with there being really no supports here. So in this case, I think this chart is so nice that I'm willing to play it, and it just happens to be the US pair. For Tron, I'm not really in love with this part on the USD, so I might open it on the BTC pair and play the BTC instead if it looks better. So yeah, you can of course make stop losses, but my point is just that you should find a chart that you like and familiarize yourself with it. So I've been trading Doge for most of this month, a little bit of last month as well. So basically from this resistance point, I started trading Doge. So just because I've been watching it so closely for the past few weeks, I'm very familiar with this chart on pretty much all time frames. I know what it looks like on the hour and the 4 hour and the day and all that. So if I see it start to change, I have a better sense of how it's going to probably play out than if I just pick a chart at random. Like if I just pick a dot, yeah, this looks like it could be a good short, and I'd probably be tempted to play it, as you said, with a stop loss, but I'm not really as familiar with it, so I'm less inclined to play it, just because, like right now, without looking, I have no idea what this looks like on low time frames. I have no idea what the weekly looks like on the high time frames. It's just not something that I've paid that much attention to, and I really don't just open charts, see something that looks nice, and like blind long or blind short it. I want to be familiar with whatever chart I'm going to play. Neo we can look at. I've actually, before I get too distracted, what we're just looking at, Luna. Yeah, Luna doesn't look bad right now. As much of a bear as I am on most altcoins, you can't deny that Luna's looking a lot stronger than most. My worry, of course, would just be, as I was saying before, that it's possible that this rejection from support, even though it is basically, you have like a V forming here, which is very good. You've got a higher high through this whole range. It's the highest it's been since the big breakdown here, and that's great. but you just want to really confirm that you're going in that direction. So it's nice you have the EMA here, and we're coming up on this nice confluence of an EMA and a daily support and the trend line. The RSI has plenty of room to move up. So if it's going to be bullish, it's probably going to be bullish right here. And that's what you want to see. So just to finish my thoughts on Luna real quick before we go on, because I know you requested that and I don't want to just like not actually give a judgment on it. So as long as this nice area here, I think it should hold if you're going to be bullish. If we started trading down here again, I would be very, very cautious. I would not really want to see you return to where most of this price action has already been happening if you're going to remain bullish. You need to, at the very least, kind of crab a little bit here, but ideally you're just going to move up and you're going to make another attempt at this resistance block, not a brock, sorry, little Japanesey today. Okay, we can look at NEO. USD pair, check that out. NEO is something I used to trade quite often, and I really got out of the habit, but it's very interesting to me to see that it went from, like, what was it at the peak, like 120, and then it went down to like 7 or 9 or something. I didn't really follow US dollar charts too much there. So big down, sort of V reversal, tapering off. It's not as high. It didn't like come all the way back up and then start to taper like most of the alts, but it's essentially looking like the same sort of formation. I don't really like it just at a glance, but we can look at it a little closer real quick, and then I'll probably call it a day. I've got a lot of storming here and I don't want to end up getting disconnected. So here's our most obvious point of resistance, just where the tops of these are ending up. And we can look for, yeah, we have some indecision here. Probably just judging by recency, I would want to mark something around where this price action was hovering and where these started. I don't really love this. I might change it shortly. You could, of course, just do this and mark the whole thing as a range, which is probably smarter, considering you have wicks down and that sort of thing. But just considering this is the majority of where the recent price action has taken place, just very quickly, what have we got? Some up, some down. Coming back into the support, the trend is not too hot. If we're looking at recency, we basically formed a daily resistance around here and then just fell away from it closer to this daily support. So my curiosity with this would be to go up to the weekly and see if anything really lines up, and unfortunately it looks even worse on the weekly because we are right at the weekly support. This interim doesn't really matter. This would be a weekly range. If you want to look to the left, you had just a little bit of buying pressure like around here before, but not a whole lot. And the thing that's super scary about this is this wick all the way down here at the top of this formation, at the top of this previous formation. So what you can see is that there was some selling pressure here, there was some suppression here, and you had some buying pressure here. So this boy is our big interaction line for NEO. Make him purple just so he stands out some more. So on the weekly, we're just kind of going down, right? There's not a lot of relief. You had 3 weeks of red, a little bit of green, and then we've in 2 weeks erased that already. We're in the process of confirming that erasure going into the weekend. So it's unlikely that we're just going to bounce from here and gigaball out when the rest of the market is still suffering. And I would also be concerned that in addition to being well under the EMA and being at weekly support, we're probably going to lose our midpoint on the RSI. We can throw this at 50. We've already very well lost it. We're underneath quite handily. So I would assume, with there being any lack of support on the weekly, there's really nothing here for us to bounce from, that the most likely scenario would be that we head down toward the 25 on NEO. So unfortunately I have to disagree. I don't really think it looks too good. You know, just Just very simply, that's the trend, and you're losing support right now on the weekly. If you want to see where that weekly support is, we can go back and yeah, it's pretty far down there from the daily even, but we're right at the weekly support. This 30, what is this, 31, 32 being the weekly support, and we've just kind of, we made our attempt to move up and we found a point of rejection here, and now we're just going back down. So I don't think it looks too hot. So quick summary, Doge, I'm out. I'm Audi 9000 until this level fails, and then I want to short this big gap. I want to make all my money right here on the way down to this boy. That's what I'm wanting to do with Doge. If I were going to play another alt, I'd probably play something like Tron, aiming for a low down here, but it doesn't appeal to me as much because there are points where you might find support on the way down, and I don't want that. I want this big vacuum where there's just really nothing at all. This is back to April, so that's not going to matter. ADA making the same kind of formation. I'm not as interested in playing that either. Too much buying support from the bottom of this range. I expect that it will also bounce. DOT looks pretty fucking miserable. I am interested in playing DOT for this area here that has really no support. This is from January, so it's been almost 7 months since we had any support from this area. Don't really expect it to do much if DOT fails, which it probably will. ETH making the same little V formation into a fade that everything else is making, so also not really interested in playing that as it heads toward the weekly support. I'm still expecting probably 1400 out of this in the short term. Neo looks bad to me. Luna looking pretty good if it can hold this level. If it can hold that level, I think Luna's doing pretty well for itself. So, unless there are any last second requests here, going to call it a day there, and no one's throwing any requests in, so I'm going to get out. Okay, thank you very much for coming by today. I hope that what you saw here was useful to you. I hope you learned something. Thank you very much for the honor of your time and your attention. I appreciate it very much. And if you have any more requests, you can throw them in the chat. You can message them to me on Twitter. I will get to them next time, and I will put up all these charts very shortly. And of course, you got my long ideas here. There will just be short version on Twitter. And I hope that everything you do works out for you, is very profitable. I want you to be rich so you can take care of me in my old age. Show some sympathy to a 900-year-old cat. I can't wait, man. I'm so excited. I'm so excited to short. I love a bear market. I'm just... Every day I look at this and I'm like, just so amped to see red. And I know that's like not normal. Everyone wants bull markets because you can just blind, you can just blind buy and make money. And that's, of course, that's what you should want. Oh, I can just buy fucking anything like 2020 post-corona stock market and immediately you get 30% back. But I really love bear markets because they take advantage of stupidity in a way that is very different than the way bull markets take advantage of stupidity. You know, if you have something like Doge, people are just smart enough to buy Doge because it's easy. You can go on like Robinhood and buy Doge. It's easy to buy Doge, so you can be just smart enough to buy it. But the people doing so don't have market experience, so they're not smart enough to sell. And that's why I'm afraid of something like this getting a legitimate spring, like a FOMO spring from TikTokers or whatever. But then, you know, Tron, like I was saying, people are just, you know, you got to be a little bit smart to get into a DEX and figure out how to buy Bitcoin and then convert that Bitcoin to Tron and all that stuff. But you know, you're just smart enough to buy, but you know that means that you're probably smart enough to sell too, and that really helps the bears out. So thank you very much for dumping bags that I've got shorts on, and if I can be of service, just send me a message. Thank you very much for coming by. Best wishes to you. Good luck in everything. I will see you next time.